contrast fabric if you want to make roses, some flower buttons, a cover button for the back, you need a ruler loop turner for the fastening, and of course you need the Frocks Frolics pattern, which you can download from Etsy.com, and some violin. First of all, you need to put the pattern together. The front and the back have each different flowers in different colours, so it's quite easy to tell them apart. Cut out every piece and assemble it into different piles, so according to front and back, and the front facing and back facing. Where you have an overlap, that's the dashed line, and a notch, you put the pieces together. If you haven't got the same flower on a piece, then clearly that doesn't go together. So here we have the back, and again we've got piece A, B, C and D. For the front you have again pieces A, B, C, D and E. The front is cut on the fold. For the back you need 2 pieces. Place them onto the fabric, which you put on the fold, so the front goes right on top of that. Make sure you do that. The facings we're not cutting out at that point. We're cutting those afterwards. Make sure you leave no gaps, so you're cutting out as economically as possible. The 2 pieces we've now got left, we're going to cut the facings with. So fold one over and cut your front facing. And for the back facing, you will see that you don't quite need as much. So make sure you don't waste any fabric. Move the fabric back until you've got just enough to cut your back facing. Pin and cut it out. Now remove the pins from the facings because we still need them. We will cut our violin or our iron-on interfacing, whatever you want to call it. So we now have got a wide front piece and 2 separate back pieces. Place those facings again on the violin. I've got the violin here folded over, so the front goes directly on the fold and the back goes where you can find a space. Now I've done that, I take my pattern pieces off. Violin has a rough side, which is the sticky side, which glues to the fabric. Place that onto the wrong side of the fabric and it's ready to be ironed on. Make sure your iron isn't too hot so it melts the violin. Also place the violin on the front and go and iron it on. Finally, you want to mark with a snip the opening in the back of the dress. And you need to cut yourself a little bias strip for your rouleaux. So where the fabric is the stretchiest, which is across the fabric, you cut. Then you fold it over and simply cut yourself a strip. There really isn't a rule as to how wide you cut this. Place the piping cord in the center of the bias binding as if you were making piping and sew right next to it on the edge. Once that is done, you cut your piping cord back, you remove the cord, and you're now ready to use your rouleaux loop turner, which got a hook on the front. So all you do is you go through that prepared strip, you hook into the fabric, and you gently ease the fabric over that hook. And there we've got the bias turned into a rouleaux loop. Now cut it to the right length and pin it to the back. It goes onto the outside of the dress. So the left side here, that's the outside, so that when we sew it in, it looks like this. Now we're ready to put our back facing together. So where we have got this snip which indicates the opening, that's where we put a vertical pin. The back we need to overlock in the center either side so that we can sew it together, because we are going to iron that and the facing seam apart. Again, I put a vertical pin in where I want my opening to be, and now I'm putting my front facing onto the front, and we are going to sew around the armhole, then the neck, leaving the shoulder open. That's very important. Don't make the mistake of closing the shoulder. And once you've sewn together the center back facing, once that seam is ironed apart, we're going to put together the center back facing and the center back. So just like the front, place it on top, and the key is to close the armhole and the neckline and leave the shoulder seam open. It is a little bit more difficult because you've got a lot more fabric from your opening point. But if you fold all the seam allowances down really well and pin them into place, you should not have a problem. I've sewn this and you can see how my sewing line ends exactly where the centre back closure starts. And now I need to do the other side. Again, I fold back the seam allowances and then sew up and around the armhole as well. Then you have to just snip all your curves and the piece is actually ready for turning inside out. Now the next thing is to sew back your seam allowances. We're going to top stitch across the center front, and we're going to do as much as we can on the armhole. That gives you a very firm edge. Just make very sure that you are actually stitching on the facing and that the seam allowance is facing the facing. So you can see the stitch here quite clearly, and that gives you that firm line. If you find this too difficult, you can just iron it really neatly. That works very well as well. So now we've got the front and the back together. The next thing I want to do is I want to mark my pleats. Now these pleats are not written in stone. What you can do is you can make them wider, and I've actually made two dresses. One of them has the pleat closer together and the buttons on top, which is just like my pattern. And the one that I'm doing here, I'm spreading them out a little bit more because I'm putting roses on, and when you put roses on you need a bit more space. So you can do that how you like it. Some of my ladies in the course have actually sewn all the way up to the top, which has also been quite nice. So there are many ways you can do this. So if you want to put on roses or buttons though, make sure that you only sew for about 1 centimeter, just holding them in place. Then lightly steam them, and we pull the front through the back. And then just make sure that the front shoulder is right in the corner here, and if it's then just that little bit too small, like you can see here on mine, then all you have to do is just let that run from that point into the seam and it'll be perfect. You have a really nice finish now. Just cut across the corners, and I'm also leveling my seam, so I'm cutting it in stages so it's nice and flat. And when you pull this through out to the outside, again you can see how flat that actually lies. It's a really, really easy way of doing your shoulder seam. And here I've sewn the roses on already and made them. So if you want to know how to make a fabric rose and put it on, you just need to go to the video. I'm now closing my side seam, and I've overlocked it as well, and then I've cut away a little bit of a triangle where it meets the underarm seam, and you want to secure the facing onto the side seam so that it can't go anywhere and doesn't ride up. Finally, we need to pin our hem. I don't over pin this. I put a pin in on every seam and in the center front, and that usually does the trick. So turn it in 1 centimeter and then up 2.5 centimeters. Stitch as close as you can to the edge, and actually just fold it over and then hold it with your hands. It's quite important to get into the habit of that, and you can just smooth the fabric in. If you had pins everywhere, you are more likely to get a seam that's not so smooth than when you just try to do it freehand. It does take a little bit of practice, but you will never want to use pins again. And there we have our dress finished. On this one, I've used the buttons, so the pleats are closer together. And for the center back, I've used a cover button. And you also can see the hem down here. It's very easy and quite, well, it looks lovely. It's a nice summer dress. For the second version, I've put these lovely roses on, and again, if you want to see how they are done and attached to the dress, you just go to the video at the end of this video. There's a link. You don't necessarily have to use a cover button. Here, I used a nice mother of pearl button. And for anyone that's interested, the dresses were made in a beautiful linen. Thank you for watching, and good luck with your dress.